Tonight's shadowy flight takes us down the roads of nostalgia in a sleek black Trans Am and into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist. Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law. So get cozy and enjoy tonight's expedition into the world of Knight Rider. The fog along the Oregon coastline did not roll in. It materialized, a heavy grey curtain that swallowed the light with indifference. It clung to the towering trunks of the ancient redwoods and covered the asphalt of Highway 101 like a shroud. Cutting through this monochromatic world was a single streak of midnight black. The Night Industries 2000 moved with a quiet hum, its scanner bar, a rhythmic crimson heartbeat, barely piercing the gloom. Inside, Michael Knight adjusted the leather collar of his jacket, shifting in his seat. He tapped a finger against the steering wheel, fighting the urge to check his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. "Kit," he said, voice laced with the restless energy that usually plagued him between missions. "Remind me again why Devon insisted we take the scenic route. I haven't seen a scene in 50 miles, just grey soup and wet trees." Kit's voice modulator flickered, the electronic voice calm and distinctly weary of Michael's complaints. "The scenic route, as you call it, Michael, was the only route available. A mudslide on Interstate 5 necessitated this detour. Furthermore, my sensors indicate that the air quality here is superior to Los Angeles by a factor of 3. You should breathe deeply." "I am breathing," Michael countered, glancing out the side window at the daunting drop-off into the churning Pacific Ocean below. "I'm breathing in moisture and pine needles. It's quiet. Too quiet. Actually, the ambient noise level is 45 decibels, mostly composed of wind shear and oceanic turbulence," Kit corrected. "However, I detect an incoming transmission from the Foundation. It is Devon." Michael straightened up. "Put him on." The dashboard monitor hummed to life, cutting through the dim interior light. Devon Miles, looking impeccable as always in a 3-piece suit despite the late hour, peered out from the screen. His expression, however, was grave. "Michael," Devon began, dispensing with the pleasantries. "I hope the drive has been uneventful. Things are about to get considerably more complicated." "They usually do, Devon," Michael replied. "What's the situation?" "We have a Code 3 priority in a town called Whispering Shores, about 20 miles north of your current position. Does the name Project Siren mean anything to you?" Michael furrowed his brow. "Sounds mythological and wet." "It is both," Devon said. "It is a prototype submersible competent utilizing a revolutionary cavitation nullifier. Essentially, it allows a vessel to move through water at high speeds without creating any noise or showing up on any traditional radar system. It's the holy grail of stealth technology. Yesterday, during a final systems check, the Siren sank just offshore." "Sabotage?" "That is what Dr. Elena Vance believes," Devon said, glancing down at a file on his desk. "She is the lead engineer. The official report cites a pressure valve failure. but Dr. Vance contacted the Foundation directly. She claims the wreckage found wasn't from the Siren at all, but another vessel called the Echo, which has also turned up missing. She believes the nullifier wasn't destroyed. She thinks it was stolen along with the Siren vessel. And if she's right, Michael surmised, the playfulness vanishing from his tone, someone out there has a piece of tech that could make every submarine in the Navy obsolete. Precisely. And to make matters worse, Dr. Vance has received death threats in the last 12 hours. She's scared, Michael, and she's stonewalling the federal investigators because she suspects a leak from the inside. She asked for us. Where do I meet her? Her laboratory is a converted cannery on the northern bluff. Keep a low profile, Michael. If someone went to the trouble of blowing up a prototype to cover a theft, they won't hesitate to remove an investigator. Good luck. The screen faded to black. Well, Kit, Michael said, gripping the wheel as the road began to wind upward toward the jagged cliffs. So much for a quiet drive in the country. I am accessing the local topography of Whispering Shores, Kit said. The terrain is difficult, highly variable elevation, dense forestation, and limited escape routes. If we encounter hostility, my surveillance range will be reduced by the atmospheric density. Just keep your scanners peeled, pal. I have a feeling we're walking into a trap. The town of Whispering Shores was a cluster of weathered Victorian houses and salt-blasted storefronts huddling against the shoreline, as if afraid the ocean might rise up and drag them under. The Vance Institute, the converted cannery Devon had mentioned, sat apart from the town, perched precariously on a rocky promontory known as Dead Man's Point. It was an industrial skeleton of rusted corrugated iron and reinforced glass, jutting out over the crashing waves. Michael guided Kit up the gravel drive, the tires crunching loudly in the damp air. He parked the Trans Am in the shadow of a large rusted water tower hidden from the main road. Wait here, Kit, Michael said, unbuckling. Keep on audio surveillance. If anyone approaches, I want to know before they even think about knocking. I shall remain vigilant, Michael. Be careful. My thermal scans indicate 3 individuals inside the main structure. One matches Dr. Vance's biometrics. The other 2 are unknown, but their heart rates are elevated. Elevated how? Scared? More like aggressive, Kit clarified. Michael's eyes narrowed. He stepped out into the biting wind, buttoning his jacket. He moved silently toward the heavy steel side door, avoiding the main entrance. He didn't need to knock. The sound of shouting drifted through the corrugated walls. I don't have it. I told you, the prototypes were all on board. A woman's voice rang out in the distance, sharp, defiant, but edging on panic. We know you keep backups, Doctor. The responding voice was smooth, cultured, and terrifyingly calm. Mr. Sterling is a patient man, but he is not a charitable one. You have until tomorrow to produce the schematics for the drive assembly. Michael pressed his back against the cold metal wall. He reached for the door handle. Locked. Kit, he whispered into his comlink watch. Micro-jam the electronic lock on the southeast service door. Processing. Done. There was a faint click. Michael slipped inside. He found himself on a catwalk overlooking the main workshop. It was a cavernous space filled with water tanks and acoustical padding. In the center, near a drafting table, stood a woman with auburn hair tied back in a chaotic bun. She wore a grease-stained lab coat and wielded a large wrench like a baseball bat. Facing her were two men. One was a towering figure in a trench coat, bald, scarred, and standing perfectly still. The other was the speaker, a man in a bespoke grey suit that looked ridiculously out of place in the grime of the cannery. "I'm calling the police," the woman threatened. "The police are 20 minutes away on winding roads, Dr. Vance," the man in the suit said, checking his watch. "And Silas here is very fast." The large man, Silas, took a step forward. Michael didn't wait. He vaulted over the railing of the catwalk, landing in a crouch between the men and the doctor. "Sorry to interrupt," Michael said, straightening up and flashing a disarming smile. "I think you have the wrong address. The menacing goon convention is down the hall on the left." The large man, Silas, didn't blink. He looked at the man in the suit. "Who is this?" the suit asked, his lip curling in distaste. "Michael Knight. I'm with the Foundation." Michael turned slightly, ensuring Dr. Vance was behind him. "And I believe you two have worn out your welcome." "The Foundation," the man mused. "Ah, independent contractors. How quaint." He adjusted his cufflinks. "I am merely a concerned investor inquiring about the loss of the Siren." "Your inquiry looks a lot like a threat," Michael noted. "I think it's time you left." Silas moved suddenly. It was a blur of motion, shockingly fast for a man of his size. He lunged for Michael, a heavy gloved fist aiming for his temple. Michael blocked the blow with his forearm, gritting his teeth at the impact. It felt like being hit with a bag of cement. He used the momentum to spin, driving a side kick into the man's midsection. Silas barely stumbled, his jaw hardening as he prepared another attack. However, he was halted by his accomplice. "Enough," the man in the suit warned sharply. "We have a schedule." Silas froze, his eyes locked onto Michael's face, memorizing it. "Next time," he whispered, his tone holding deadly promise. "We will be in touch, Dr. Vance," the other man said. "Think about our offer." They turned and walked out the main bay doors, disappearing into the fog as if they were never there. Michael let out a breath he'd been holding and turned to the woman. "Are you all right?" Dr. Elena Vance lowered the wrench, but her eyes were blazing with suspicion. She looked Michael up and down, unimpressed. "Great. Another cowboy. I suppose Devon sent you." "He did," Michael said. I know who you are, Mr. Knight." Elena cut him off sharply. "Or at least, I know who handles the Foundation's dirty work." She walked past him to the drafting table, her hands trembling slightly as she shuffled papers. "You shouldn't have interfered. I had it under control." Michael raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure you did, but either way, they're gone now." Elena stopped. She looked at the door where the men had vanished, her shoulders slumping. The bravado evaporated, leaving a brilliant, exhausted woman standing in a cold warehouse. "They'll be back. They want the nullifier schematics," she said quietly. "They think I have a copy." "Do you?" "No. Everything was on the mainframe aboard the Siren." She looked up at Michael, her eyes intense. "But they're right about one thing. The nullifier wasn't destroyed. I tracked the hydroacoustic signature right before the blast. The device was detached. Someone cut it out of the hull and swam it away before the crash. Then we need to find out who has it, Michael said, before they figure out how to use it. Who was the man in the suit? I don't know his name, but I've seen him before, Elena said. At the fundraiser for the project last month, he was talking to the project director. Michael tapped his comms. Kit, did you get a scan on those two? Affirmative, Michael. Kit's voice echoed from the watch, startling Elena. The vehicle leaving the premises is a heavily modified armored SUV, registered to a shell company in the Caymans. However, facial recognition identifies the man in the suit as Victor Sterling, an import-export consultant previously investigated by Interpol for trafficking military-grade hardware. Sterling, Michael repeated. Well, at least we have a name. And the large man? Michael asked. Silas Vane, former mercenary, dishonorable discharge from Special Ops. Michael, his psychological profile indicates extreme sociopathy. He is considered highly dangerous. I got that impression, Michael muttered, rubbing his sore forearm. Eleanor stared at Michael's wrist. Why is your watch talking back to you? Long story. Michael smiled. Dr. Vance, if Sterling thinks you have the designs, you aren't safe here. We need to get you somewhere secure. Eleanor shook her head stubbornly. No way, she insisted, pulling out a small earpiece, connected by a thin wire to an antenna. If they turn that device on underwater, my hydrophones will pick it up. You need me. Michael sighed, looking at the glass walls of the lab, then out into the thickening fog where Sterling and Vane were lurking. All right, he conceded, but you're sticking to me like glue. Elena looked at him, her guard going up again. I work alone, Mr. Knight. So do I, usually, Michael lied. But tonight, we're making an exception. Bring your fancy headphones. We're going for a ride. A ride where? To investigate the blast site. If they stole the device, they had to move it. Kit has scanners that can pick up trace molecular signatures even underwater. Maybe we can pick up the trail before they activate it. Elena hesitated, then grabbed a heavy waterproof case. Fine, but I drive. Sorry, Doc. Michael grinned, gesturing toward the door. But my car is very particular about who sits in the driver's seat. As they exited the warehouse, the fog had thickened to a near impenetrable shroud. Michael ushered Elena into the passenger seat of the Trans Am. My God, Elena whispered, looking at the dashboard. It was lit up like the cockpit of a jet. What is this? Darth Vader's TIE fighter? I had a similar thought at first sight, Michael chuckled, sliding into the driver's seat. No, this is Kit, or rather, the Knight Industries 2000. Kit, meet Dr. Elena Vance. A pleasure, Doctor, Kit said smoothly. Elena stared at the voice modulator. It is artificial intelligence. Advanced, Michael said, firing up the turbine engine. The car purred with a deep, powerful thrum. Michael, Kit interrupted, voice urgent. I am detecting a fast-moving object approaching from the south road. It is closing at 80 miles per hour. Michael threw the car into reverse, spinning 180 degrees with a screech of tires. Sterling? Negative. The signature is much larger. It is a semi-truck, and it is not decelerating for the turn. Headlights blinded them through the fog. Massive beams mounted high up, A logging truck, loaded down with timber, roared out of the mist, barreling straight for the exit of the Institute's driveway. It swerved, blocking the only exit. They're boxing us in, Michael realized. He shifted into drive. Kit, can we make it through the gap on the left? Negative, Michael. Clearances are insufficient. The cliff edge is unstable. The truck stopped. Shadows poured out of the cab, men with automatic weapons. Analysis, Michael snapped. 4 hostiles, armed with assault rifles. The truck is reinforced, Kit reported. Eleanor gasped. We're trapped. Not quite, Michael said, his hands gripping the yoke firmly. He looked at the water tower, then at the steep earthen rampart that led up to the old cannery loading dock, which ended in a sheer drop off the cliff, but angled toward the road beyond the truck. Kit, calculate the trajectory for a turbo boost over the truck. Angle of incidence, 30 degrees. Michael, Kit warned. The landing zone is wet asphalt on a curve. Traction will be minimal. We'll handle it. Michael slammed his foot onto the accelerator. The Trans Am surged forward toward the truck. What are you doing? Elena screamed, grabbing the dashboard. The gunmen opened fire. Bullets sparked harmlessly off Kit's molecular bonded shell. Hang on, Michael yelled. As the car nearly collided with the massive obstruction, Michael hit the button labeled Turbo Boost. A compressed hiss of air fired from beneath the chassis. The black car launched into the air, soaring over the heads of the gunmen and the roof of the logging truck. For a second, they were suspended in the grey void, weightless above the fog and the trees. Then, gravity took hold. The Trans Am slammed down onto the roadway beyond the blockade, sparks flying as the suspension absorbed the massive impact. The car fishtailed violently on the wet pavement. Michael fought the wheel, correcting the spin. Ski mode, Kit. Left side. The car tilted up onto its left wheels, squeezing past a jutting rock face as they regained control, then slammed back down onto all 4 tires, rocketing away down the winding coastal road. Behind them, the lights of the truck faded into the mist. Michael exhaled, glancing at Elena. She was pale, her eyes wide, one hand gripping the door handle with white knuckles, the other still bracing herself against Michael's shoulder. You okay? He asked gently. Eleanor slowly turned her head to look at him, then at her hand lingering on his broad frame. Yes, she muttered, finding her voice before quickly pulling her hand away. But that shouldn't be possible. The power-to-weight ratio required for that trajectory. Trade secret, he winked. But stick with us, Doc. The night is young. Michael, Kit interrupted. I have analyzed the bullet impacts. The ammunition used was armor-piercing. I am also detecting a localized broadcast signal tracking us. They didn't just want to stop us. They are hunting us. Michael looked into the rearview mirror, into the swirling fog. Let them come, Michael said, his voice hardening. Now we know the game. Time to make them play by our rules. The adrenaline of the leap faded, replaced by the steady, hypnotic hum of the turbine engine. Outside, the fog had transformed the world into a tunnel of grey, illuminated only by the rhythmic sweep of Kit's scanner and the twin beams of the headlights cutting a path through the towering redwoods. Elena Vance sat rigid in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the dashboard displays scrolling with dizzying speed. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was studying. "Molecular bonded shell," she murmured, her voice regaining that sharp, analytical edge. She reached out, hesitating, then tapped a readout on the monitor. And a turbine engine that runs silently, even at high speeds. The heat dissipation alone, this shouldn't exist. Who built this? MIT? "It's a private venture," Michael said, keeping his eyes on the winding road. "Created by Wilson Knight." "I am certainly not a venture, Michael," Kit interjected. "I am a cybernetic entity. And Dr. Vance, please do not tap the alpha circuit display. It is sensitive." Eleanor pulled her hand back, looking at Michael with a mix of disbelief and fascination. "It has a personality profile. You programmed it to be snarky." "It picked that up on its own," Michael grinned. "Look, Doc, we're safe for the moment. But Sterling and Vane aren't going to stop. You mentioned the hydrophones. If they have the nullifier, they're going to test it. Where would they go?" Elena took a deep breath, forcing her mind away from the impossible car and back to the dangerous reality. She closed her eyes, visualizing the coastline. "The nullifier requires deep water to calibrate the cavitation field," she said, shifting in her seat. "But the ocean floor here is a graveyard of jagged rocks. There's only one place deep enough and secluded enough for a run like that within 50 miles. The same place we tested it on the sub, and where its wreckage is now located. The Devil's Throat." "Sounds charming," Michael noted. "Let me guess, it's not a tourist spot." "It's a tidal strait about 10 miles north. High currents, dangerous undertow. The locals stay away because of the unpredictable swells. Smugglers used it during Prohibition." She looked at Michael. "If Sterling is a broker, he's not just stealing the tech to keep it in a box. He needs to demonstrate it. If I were him, I'd run the submersible through the throat tonight. The thermal layers in the water there would hide them from naval sonar, but not from my passive arrays." "Kit," Michael said. "Plot a course for the Devil's Throat." "Plotting," Kit replied. "Michael, I must warn you. The road leading to that sector is unpaved and currently experiencing heavy fog density. Visibility is less than 10 feet. We've driven in worse, pal. Let's go." The approach to the Devil's Throat was less a road and more a suggestion of dirt clinging to the side of a precipice. To their left, the cliff shot upward into blackness. To their right, a sheer drop plummeted down to the churning ocean, the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks, booming like distant artillery. Kit moved cautiously, scanner penetrating the mist. The atmosphere in the cockpit was intimate, the small space a warm sanctuary against the cold, hostile night. Michael navigated a particularly sharp hairpin turn. The movement was smooth, but the centrifugal force was undeniable. Elena slid across the leather bench seat, her shoulder colliding softly with Michael's arm. She didn't pull away immediately. "Sorry," she whispered, before eventually settling back into her own seat. Michael glanced at her, catching the reflection of the dashboard lights in her eyes. He offered a reassuring, easy smile, one that was less about bravado and more about comfort. Don't worry about it. Kit's suspension is stiff. It takes some getting used to. Elena's gaze lingered on him a moment before she snapped back to focus. You handle this chaos very well, Mr. Knight. Most people would be shaking after that jump. Call me Michael, he said softly, and I've had a lot of practice. Panic doesn't solve problems, Elena. It just makes you a slower target. She retreated to her side of the car, but the air between them had shifted. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a shared, quiet tension. The silence was broken by a subtle chirp from Elena's hydrophones. She pressed the earpiece into place and listened intently as she slowly aimed the antenna toward the signal. I'm picking something up near the ridge, she whispered. We are approaching a location, Kit announced. Thermal scans detect heat signatures, 2 vehicles, and a large generator array. Michael killed the headlights. Kit, go to silent mode and bring us in closer. The car ghosted around the final bend. Below them, carved into a small rocky inlet protected from the open sea, was an old boathouse and a decaying pier. Floodlights cut through the fog, illuminating the water. There, suspended from a crane, was a sleek, teardrop-shaped pod made of matte black composite. The Echo unit, Eleanor breathed, leaning forward. It's the test mule for the nullifier drive. They didn't just steal the tech, they've stolen the pod as well. Her jaw tightened. I knew it. They must have sabotaged the trial, staging it so they could take everything for themselves. And there's our welcoming committee, Michael pointed out. On the dock, Silas Vane stood like a statue, watching a team of technicians secure the pod. Victor Sterling was pacing near a limousine, talking into a satellite phone. Kit, Michael instructed. Keep scanning that pod. I want to know if that drive is active. Elena and I are going down there. Michael, the terrain is treacherous, Kit warned. I cannot grapple you back up if you fall. We'll be careful. Keep your scanners peeled. Michael opened the door, sliding out into the damp night as Elena followed closely behind. The descent was steep, a treacherous path of wet shale and pine roots. They moved in tandem, Michael leading. They reached the cover of a stack of rusted lobster traps near the edge of the pier, peering through the slats. They were close enough now to hear voices over the crash of the tide. Buyers are in position offshore, Sterling was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the damp air. We initiate the run in 10 minutes. The Echo will traverse the Devil's Throat and rendezvous with the target vessel. No sonar pings, no bubble trail. Total invisibility. The currents are peaking, a technician argued, looking nervous. Without the stabilization software from the main lab, the nullifier might oscillate. It could create a resonance that would give our position away. Vane stepped forward, his shadow engulfing the technician. Then you hold the yoke steady. Mr. Sterling promised a demonstration. You will provide it. Behind the lobster traps, Eleanor gasped softly. Michael turned, putting a finger to his lips. They don't understand, she whispered, her mouth right next to Michael's ear to avoid being heard. Her breath was warm on his neck, sending a shiver down his spine. that had nothing to do with the cold. The nullifier works by creating a vacuum pocket. If it oscillates in the throat, it won't just shake the pod. It'll create a cavitation resonance, a sonic boom underwater. So, a big noise? Michael whispered back, his eyes locked on hers. No, in a confined channel like this, that amount of energy, it could trigger a seafloor collapse. It would cause a tidal surge that would wipe out the town down the coast. Whispering Shores sits at sea level, Michael. They'll drown. Michael's expression hardened. The stakes just went from theft to catastrophe. We have to stop that launch, Michael whispered. Can you disable it? If I can get to the control box on the crane, I can scramble the frequency, but it's right next to Vane. I'll draw Vane away, Michael said. You get to the box. When I give the signal, you scramble it. What's the signal? Michael grinned, the reckless glint returning to his eyes. You'll know it when you hear it. He raised his wristwatch. Kit, do you have line of sight on the generator array behind the limo? Affirmative, Michael. I need a distraction. Something loud. I believe a micro-jam of the generator's governor should cause a rather spectacular backfire. Do it. Michael squeezed Elena's shoulder. Go. Stay low. She nodded, slipping away into the darkness beneath the pier. Michael waited, counting down the seconds. The boom that followed was deafening. The diesel generator exploded with a concussive force that shook the ground. Sparks showered the dock. The floodlights flickered and died, plunging the pier into semi-darkness, lit only by the burning generator. Secure the perimeter, Sterling shouted, ducking behind his limo. Silas Vane didn't flinch. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness, looking away from the crane. Michael broke cover. He didn't run for the crane. He ran for the technicians, shouting, "Federal agents! Drop it!" Kit backed up Michael's subterfuge immediately, its external speakers creating the illusion of multiple agents. "We have the place surrounded. Drop your weapons and put your hands up." Chaos ensued. The technicians scrambled. Vane roared, a sound of pure primal rage, and charged at Michael. This was the distraction Elena needed. She sprinted from the shadows, climbing the ladder of the crane platform. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she reached the control panel. Down on the dock, Michael braced himself. Vane was fast, but Michael was ready this time. As the attacker swung a massive fist, he ducked, landing 2 quick jabs to the giant's kidneys. It was like hitting a brick wall, but it made Vane turn. "You again," the man hissed. "I will break you." "You talk too much," Michael retorted, drawing the man's gaze away from the crane. Vane lunged. Michael sidestepped, but the wet wood was slippery. He lost his footing, and a large fist caught him in the chest, sending him sprawling across the dock. Vane drew a serrated combat knife, the blade catching the light in a glimmer of deadly intent. No more games. Above them, Eleanor frantically typed commands into the crane's terminal. Come on. "Get that pod in the water," Sterling barked from behind the car. "Ignore the sirens. There's only one intruder." A technician slammed a manual release lever on the pod, The Echo unit dropped into the water with a splash, its engine already humming with a strange, high-pitched whine. "Michael," Eleanor called from the tower. "It's in the water. The drive is engaging." Michael rolled backward as Vane slashed at him, the knife barely missing his midsection. He kicked upward, his boot connecting with Vane's wrist. The knife skittered away into the dark water. "Kit!" Michael yelled into his watch. "I need backup, now!" From the cliff road above, a roar echoed. Then, the screech of tires. Kit didn't bother with the road. It drove straight off the embankment. The black Trans Am sailed through the air, crashing through the roof of an old boathouse in a shower of splinters and shingles, landing heavily on the pier decking. "I am here, Michael," Kit announced, debris falling from its hood. The sudden arrival of a flying car momentarily stunned everyone. Even Vane paused. "Pick up the doctor," Michael shouted, scrambling to his feet. He rushed Vane, tackling the giant around the waist and driving him backward into a stack of fuel drums. It bought him 3 seconds. Michael spun and sprinted for the car. Elena slid down the crane ladder, sprinting across the dock. Kit swung his passenger door open. She dove inside. Michael vaulted over the hood, sliding across the smooth black finish, and dropped into the driver's seat. The car shot backward just as Vane recovered, drawing a handgun. Bullets pinged harmlessly off the windshield. Kit spun 180 degrees and roared back up the access ramp toward the main road. "Did we stop it?" Michael asked, breathless. Elena was staring at the monitor on the dashboard, her face ashen. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "The Echo launched. It's heading for the Devil's Throat and the cavitation frequency. It's already destabilizing. We have maybe 20 minutes before it hits resonance." And then, she looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. "The shockwave will trigger a landslide underwater. Whispering Shores will be hit by a 30-foot wall of water." Michael gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The playful adventure was gone. This was a race against time. "Can we override it remotely?" Michael asked. "Not from here. The signal is encrypted. We have to get within range of the pod." "But it's underwater," Michael noted. "We need to get to the shore," Elena said, her mind racing. "If I can splice Kit's transmitter into the coastal warning buoy system, I might be able to blast a kill code powerful enough to overload the nullifier." "Where's the nearest access point?" "The lighthouse at Cape Hollow. It's 5 miles up the coast." "Okay, Kit. Give me all you got," Michael said, his voice low and dangerous. "Super pursuit mode." "Michael, the road conditions are..." "Just do it, buddy. We haven't a moment to lose." The night 2000 began to transform. Air intakes snapped open on the hood, spoilers extended. The nose cone elongated for aerodynamics. The engine note shifted from a hum to a jet-like scream. "Holy crap," Elena murmured, bracing herself against the door. But this time she reached out, placing her hand over Michael's on the gear shift. It was a gesture of solidarity, a silent promise that they were in this together. Michael turned his hand over, gripping hers tightly for a brief second before returning to the wheel. "Let's go," Michael said. The digital speedometer climbed instantly. 80, 120, 190. They blurred into the night, a streak of black lightning racing to save a town that was sound asleep, unaware that a silent bomb was ticking beneath the waves. Behind them, in the rear view, Michael saw headlights pursuing them. The armored SUV, a stream of jet fire trailing behind it that propelled it to speeds capable of matching Kit. Sterling isn't giving up, Michael noted.
He can't afford to, Elena replied. Time to make them play by our rules, Michael said, narrowing his eyes. Kit, prepare the oil slicks and smoke screen. We're going to clear the board.
The sheer velocity of super pursuit mode transformed the world outside the windshield into a streaking tunnel of grey and black, a sensory blur that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Inside the cockpit, however, the ride remained eerily smooth, a testament to the advanced stabilizers fighting against the uneven coastal asphalt. Michael steered with a fluid, instinctive precision, his hands dancing over the yoke as he guided the machine through the winding turns of the cliffside highway. Beside him, Eleanor Vance watched the coastline rush by, her anxiety slowly transmuting into a steely resolve as she realized that the impossible car and its driver offered her the only tangible hope of averting disaster. Michael. Kit's voice emerged with a composed urgency, cutting through the high-pitched whine of the engine. My rear sensors indicate that the armored SUV is struggling to maintain our pace, yet they are driving with a recklessness that endangers us all. They are attempting to close the gap by cutting across the switchbacks. Michael glanced at the rearview mirror, where the bouncing headlights of the heavy pursuit vehicle appeared like angry eyes in the mist. They're desperate, Kit, and dangerous, Michael observed, his voice calm and measured. Sterling has a lot of money invested in this technology, and he'll do anything to protect that investment, including knocking us off the edge of the road and into the ocean below. The next curve is a sharp descent toward the lighthouse approach, Eleanor warned, her fingers tightening around the edge of the console as she visualized the map in her mind. The shoulder is soft, dirt, and loose gravel. If they try to ram us there, then we'll make sure the ground isn't the only thing that's slippery. Michael finished for her, a small, confident smile touching his lips. Kit, prepare the oil jets. Let's wait until we hit the apex of the turn. As the sleek car swept into the banking curve, the headlights of the SUV filled the rear cabin with a blinding glare. The heavy truck surged forward, jet engine roaring, aiming to clip Kit's rear bumper and send them spinning into the ravine. Michael waited until the precise moment when gravity and momentum were fighting for control of the heavy pursuer, then tapped the switch on the console. A slick, dark sheen coated the asphalt behind them, invisible in the night, but devastatingly effective. The result was immediate and kinetic. The SUV's tires lost all purchase on the road, the vehicle sliding sideways with a screech of protesting rubber that echoed off the canyon walls. It drifted helplessly, momentum carrying it away from Kit and into the deep, muddy ditch that lined the cliff face. There was a heavy, crunching thud as the vehicle bogged down, tilting precariously but coming to a halt, its engine sputtering into silence. Pursuit neutralized, Kit reported, with a hint of satisfaction. Occupants appear shaken but uninjured. I have already alerted the local authorities to their location. Good work, buddy, Michael said, disengaging super pursuit mode as the aerodynamic spoilers retracted flush with the bodywork. Now, let's handle the real problem. The Cape Hollow lighthouse loomed ahead, a solitary sentinel standing against the dark expanse of the ocean. Its oscillating beam cut rhythmic slices through the fog, illuminating the churning whitecaps below, where the dangerous energies of the echo device were building. As they pulled up to the base of the whitewashed tower, the very ground seemed to vibrate with a low, nausea-inducing hum, the sound of the seafloor beginning to resonate with the cavitation drive. We have less than 8 minutes before the frequency destabilizes the shelf, Eleanor said, unbuckling her seatbelt before the car had even fully stopped. I need to access the junction box at the base of the tower. Kit, can you interface if I expose the main trunk line? If you can bridge the connection, Doctor, I can inject the kill code directly into the buoy transmitter array, Kit assured her. They stepped out into the biting wind, the salty spray of the ocean misting their faces. Michael grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, illuminating the rusted service panel on the side of the lighthouse, while Elena worked the latches with frantic, dexterous fingers. The hum in the air was louder here, a physical pressure that pressed against their eardrums. "The panel is corroded," Eleanor shouted over the wind, struggling with a stuck lever. "Allow me," Michael said gently, stepping in close behind her. He reached around, his arms bracketing her as he applied leveraged force to the rusted metal. For a moment, she was enclosed in his warmth, sheltered from the gale, and the proximity sparked a fleeting, unspoken recognition of the bond they had forged in the fire of the night's events. With a groan of yielding metal, the panel gave way. Elena quickly stripped the casing from a thick bundle of wires. "Kit, extend your micro-jamming probe. I need to splice you in right here." A slender antenna extended from the car's front fender, tilting toward the open box. A small arc of blue electricity jumped between the car and the panel as the connection was established. "I am in," Kit announced, the scanner bar pulsing rapidly. "Searching for the Echo Unit's command frequency. Signal acquired. It is heavily encrypted." "Bypass it," Michael urged, looking out toward the dark water where the waves were beginning to churn with unnatural violence. "I am attempting a brute force decryption," Kit replied. "The resonance is peaking, Michael. The geological strata are beginning to fracture." Eleanor looked at Michael, fear warring with determination in her eyes. "If this doesn't work..." "It will," Michael said softly, holding her gaze, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. A high-pitched screech erupted from the lighthouse's foghorn speaker as Kit forced the signal through. Then, abruptly, the vibrating hum in the ground ceased. The unnatural churning of the water slowed, returning to the rhythmic, chaotic pounding of a natural tide. The oppressive weight in the air vanished, leaving only the sound of the wind and the sea. "The Echo Unit has shut down," Kit said, its modulated voice returning to its usual calm tone. "The cavitation bubble has collapsed safely. The danger has passed." Eleanor slumped against the wall of the lighthouse, letting out a long, shuddering breath. Michael was there instantly, his arm around her waist to steady her. "We did it," she whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. "We actually did it." The morning sun broke through the dissipating fog in shafts of pale gold, illuminating the peaceful coastline of whispering pines. The terror of the night seemed like a distant memory, washed away by the morning tide. Several Foundation vehicles were parked near the Vance Institute, and Devon Miles stood near the cliff edge, looking impeccably tailored despite the early hour, supervising the transfer of a handcuffed Victor Sterling and Silas Vane into police custody. Michael leaned against Kit's hood, watching the scene with a weary satisfaction. Elena approached him, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee she had retrieved from the lab. She looked different in the daylight, softer, the sharp edges of her cynicism smoothed away by relief. "I thought you might need this," she said, handing him a cup. "It's not high octane, but it's hot." "Thanks," Michael said, taking a sip and smiling. "So, what happens now? Back to the drawing board?" "The Navy is recovering the Echo unit," Eleanor sighed, looking out at the ocean. "They're classifying the Siren project. I suppose I'll go back to mapping whale migration patterns. It's quieter, less dangerous." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. "And what about you? Off to the next impossible mission?" "Something like that," Michael admitted, the perpetual wanderlust that defined his life settling back onto his shoulders. "There's always another road." Eleanor stepped closer, the space between them charged with the memory of the night's intimacy. She reached out, her hand resting gently on the lapel of his leather jacket, smoothing the material. "You know, Michael," she said softly, "most people come to Whispering Shores to hide. You're the first person I've met who came here to be found." She stood on her tiptoes, placing a soft, lingering kiss on his cheek. It was a gesture of gratitude, but also of regret for the timing of 2 lives intersecting only to diverge again. "Thank you," she whispered against his skin, "for everything." Michael looked at her, a genuine tenderness in his expression. "Take care of yourself, Elena, and keep those windows locked. I have a customized security system now," she smiled, glancing at the black car. "Indeed, Doctor," Kit spoke up, causing Elena to jump slightly before laughing. "I have taken the liberty of upgrading your lab's firewall protocols. Mr. Sterling will find no back doors should he ever make bail." "Show off," Michael chuckled, opening the driver's door. He slid into the cockpit, the familiar embrace of the driver's seat welcoming him home. He cranked the engine, the turbine purring to life with a sound that promised endless horizons. As he shifted into drive, he looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Elena stood watching them, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the redwood forest, her hand raised in a wave. "She was a remarkable woman, Michael," Kit observed as they turned onto the highway, the yellow lines stretching out toward the south. "Yeah, she was, pal," Michael agreed, putting on his sunglasses to shield his eyes from the glare of the rising sun. "Smart, brave, and she realized you were the brains of the operation." Her perceptual abilities were certainly above average. "Don't let it go to your CPU," Michael laughed, settling back as the road opened up before them. "Come on, Kit. Let's see what's over the next horizon." The black Trans Am accelerated smoothly, a shadow chasing the light. They disappeared around the bend of the coast, ready for whatever awaited them in the miles to come.